and Zoe Gibson, National Retention Lead, and Denise Fitzsimmons, Retention Lead at Howell Dda, who will be attending to agenda item 3.3. I've received no apologies for absence. I'm asking for any declarations of interest that are not already declared that are material or pertinent to today's agenda.
I was formerly the interim chair of AaGIC, so I'm very aware of the legislation that's come to the board.
I'm absolutely sure that's not a conflict.
No, I know it's conflict, but I guess I should try
Okay.
to declare that.
I need to say and point out the obvious. It's Jill's last board meeting as an independent member. She's getting better, please. I want to put on record here now, right up front, how much we've valued and recognised your contribution from the establishment of this board right up to this very last innings as vice chair, and I want to say thank you. So, I'd like to draw your attention to the draft minutes of the board meeting held on the 28th of November. Have board members read these minutes? Are there any issues you want to raise around accuracy? No? I then take you to the action log of the board meeting held on the 28th of November. Can you note those actions, please? I'll go back to the board minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of November. Are there any issues you want to raise as matters arising that are not covered by today's agenda or by the action law? Can I therefore ask you approve the board minutes? Thank you very much. You have read my chair's report, and I just want to make a comment, and it's really about how important the value is of education and training and research, and how important people are. And whilst the announcement of a consultation by Cardiff University yesterday, and today we have our first sight of the documentation, I'd like to say that our focus is on those people who are studying at present, nursing in particular at Cardiff University, those people who will be considering coming to Cardiff to study nursing in the next year, and those people who have dedicated themselves to the education, training and research in nursing that are employed by Cardiff University. We as an organisation want to be the best of partners, and I look forward to the way that we work together during this consultation period to come to the best outcomes for nursing and for the NHS in Wales. I would hope that people would understand that we need to think through carefully what this means and how we can be helpful in the aim of ensuring a vibrant nursing workforce across all the communities in Wales. I very much am excited by seeing the nursing workforce strategy on today's agenda. I think it is just so needed. I'd like to again comment on Jill. One of the things that you have to do when you set up a new organisation is to ensure that it is always safe. That what you do is done in the way that makes good things be done in a good way for good reasons. And I think, Jill, if I was to summarise your major contribution to this organisation, it's been to keep us safe. And that's something that I expect us all to carry on. With Jill leaving, I can confirm that the process is in place to for an appointment of a new independent member, and I hope to be having the interviews in over the next 3 weeks. John Gammon, I request that the board approves the proposal that John Gammon be appointed as our vice chair from the 1st of February 2025. Can I ask for your approval?
Yes.
Jill also is the vice chair of the Education Commissioning and Quality Committee, and therefore I request that the board approves Judith Hardesty as the vice chair of Education Commissioning and Quality Committee from the 1st of February. Can I ask your approval?
Yes.
I'll draw your attention to the other bit of work that Jill has done, reflected in the vice chair's report, and that's the important link between the vice chair's peer group in Wales across all the health organisations, which particularly focuses on primary care and also on mental health. And I'd like to thank you very specifically for making sure that everyone is aware of, and that we also as an organisation are more aware of the issues as they stand. Thank you, Jill. And I know that you've worked with John in preparation for him going to that group. And finally, not quite finally, the stakeholder reference group meeting. How important is it that we actually have a vibrant stakeholder reference group? And I'm really grateful for all the partners who participate very freely with their time in that group. It was a great meeting. I won't go into detail, but it was really good to hear. And it is only by working together that we will get the most for the Welsh Pound. And then I will say this, I'm immensely proud of the way that the people who work in HEIW not only do their job, but actually are ambassadors for the organisation. A mae'n pleser mawr i weld ffordd maen nhw'n gweithio, a beth maen nhw'n dweud tu allan, a beth maen nhw'n cymryd i mewn i HEIW. We have an amazing set of staff whose focus on the NHS's development through education, training and research and leadership. That is something we should support wholeheartedly, and I'm very proud of. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. So I won't go through all of the items in my Chief Executive's report, and apologies once again for this being published late. But we were hoping to have some news to update the board on with regard to the remit letter and the financial allocation. But as we currently sit, we haven't received those just yet. But obviously, we would want to assure board members that we are doing everything we can to mitigate that delay by developing the plan and the priorities we want to take forward next year. And depending on when we do receive that information, we'll have to then review what impact that has on the rest of our planning process, because clearly, like the chairman has said, we want to engage partners in that, but we also need to engage the board in that, particularly when it comes to making priority decisions. So we will keep you informed, obviously, on any news on that front. The other thing to pick up is also that in the spirit of things that are changing and appointments being made, obviously Tom has been doing a fantastic job of acting into the medical director role since Push left us last May. We've all seen the news that Push has not only gone on to comment to Welsh Government, but he's also secured a great new job in the General Medical Council that he starts in May as well. So we are in the early stages of starting the process to recruit a medical director on a substantive basis. We're just reviewing the job description, because it's probably been about 7 years since we last looked at that, to make sure that that is up to date. And we hope to go out to advert in the next 4 to 6 weeks, but obviously we will keep board members informed around that. And in the meantime, obviously, really grateful to Tom for all he's doing to step into his shoes. And the final point, you've already mentioned, Chair, the recent announcement by Cardiff University regarding a consultation on the School of Nursing. So obviously to reiterate the priority we need on making sure that current students are getting the right experience, to consider the impact on staff, to consider the impact on students that might be starting their programmes this year, but also to reinforce the fact that as Commissioner of a number of places on those programmes, we need to be integrally involved in those conversations going forward to really make sure that the outcome of that consultation and the options that are considered are in line with what we would want for NHS Wales and for nursing in Cardiff in particular, but recognising it also serves neighbouring health boards as well. So that obviously is going to be a priority for us over the coming weeks to really understand, how we develop those plans going forward. So I'm happy to take any questions on anything else on my report.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Can I just go back to the action log? Judith, I missed you.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, it's okay. It was the first item under 2811. And it's just a clarification. The target date was December, and then the progress is there about saying something will be undertaken, but it doesn't give a date as to when that will be undertaken.
I think you're right to raise it to the date, to Chair. In terms of that particular action, the action is asking about that Commissioner's research into AHP retention to be widened to include allied health professionals supply. In order to do that, as part of that workforce development plan, there is in that plan actually the need to actually refine and actually review the ESR, the electronic staff record bank that we've got, in order to make sure that people actually are entering actually the right to titles for their roles actually in that. And actually that needs to be done before we can then actually start to undertake research. So that piece of work is underway. So that the ESR data cleanse, as we call it, actually is currently underway. And it's only when that will be completed that actually we have built into the workforce plan that we've actually got, actually that we will actually be undertaking that work on that supply. And that has been amended, and I can actually share it with the board actually the updated version of that.
Can we take that action, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
On that point, there is a slight discrepancy between the actions in the minutes and the actions on the action log. The conversation last time was about updating the HP document to provide more of a strategic narrative and to be clear about the different parts of the included. So, and that's been done. This has been shared now with the board.
No, that's what I was sharing. That's what I say to share that.
So the retention was part of that, right? Yeah. It was a broader action, wasn't it, to update the document for it. So, yeah.
So,
you're happy with that?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No, it's okay.
Okay. I'm going to go to part 3, strategic matters. 3.1, approval of the strategic nursing workforce plan.
I'm going to ask you actually to put the presentation.
Lisa, I know we're all very pleased to see this. Yes.
No more than me. Actually, it's really absolutely wonderful, and I'm really delighted that we've actually been able to bring to you the strategic nursing workforce plan for this board to consider and approve today. What I will say is this is the first strategic nursing workforce plan for Wales, and it is a key ambition actually of us actually to improve health and well-being and actually the workplace of nurses as we go forward. It's ambitious. It provides a foundation for transformational change to address the long-standing challenges that we've currently got and the growing demands that we will have going forward. The plan is going to deliver a sustainable, robust, flexible and well-supported nursing workforce for Wales in order that we deliver the safe and quality care that is needed for our population. And that is absolutely the key thing that we need to do for it. So if I have the first slide, please. So what does this actually mean and what difference will it make? So here, actually, I'm not going to go through it actually in detail, but basically I will remind actually that nursing represents actually 40% of the workforce in the NHS. So we are a significant workforce in terms of the breadth of the work that we do and actually where we actually undertake this. So here what we've got is a clear, structured and a proactive approach to the challenges that we actually currently face, but this is what our aim is of what difference this will make to nurses going forward. And as a result of this, we actually introduced as part of developing this plan some workforce modelling. This has actually started with this nursing workforce plan, and we are refining and developing it. And we are actually very grateful to our digital team who have provided that support. It has gained interest wider the NHS about how that modelling takes place, and the more information we gather, the more refined that modelling can be in order to determine what our workforce in the future will be. As a result of this, we undertook this piece of work with really a very wide engagement with not just the nursing workforce, but with other stakeholders as well. And we did have a consultation event. We called it the Sgwrs Fawr, the big conversation. And the key messages that came back from this is from nurses wanted to be appreciated, they wanted to be developed, they wanted to be trusted, they wanted to be supported, and they wanted to be helped in order to deliver the safe quality of care to patients. Go to the next slide, please. So as far as this plan is concerned, the rationale and the strategic objectives come into three main domains. It's about growing our workforce, transforming our workforce, and supporting our workforce. So what we've done is really explored the essential components of the nursing workforce and workforce supply and focused on retention, attraction, and the image of nursing, and obviously the commissioning of pre-registration, which is a key responsibility of Health Education Improvement Wales. I mentioned there the key areas that we are focusing on in terms of retention. You will hear later a presentation from Zoe about the national retention programme we've got in place at HEIW. But what I will say is that was born out of where we developed a nurse retention plan within this particular plan. We developed that and we're already working through it as we publish this going forward. But as a result of what we found, what we researched and what we evidenced, we were able to inform that national programme of work, which now will benefit the whole of the workforce in NHS Wales. We've also looked at the Band 4 role. This is the Registered Nursing Associate role, where Welsh Government has introduced a policy to introduce this position in Wales, subject to legal agreement. And this is quite exciting. It's it's going to support widening access, how people come into a nursing career and go on, believe it or not, to become registered nurses as well. So this is something that we are working with Welsh Government to start to implement, and we will be bringing more information about that in due course. And of course, the key thing is the education pipeline. This is not just a pre-registration stage. This is about people in schools and our young people of encouraging them that nursing is a great career to come into. And we're looking at right across the board. And those are the benefits that I'm identifying there. We move on to the next slide, please. So in terms of improving the quality of the services, it was important to recognise we needed to transform our nursing workforce as well. We can't continue to do exactly what we need to do because population health need is changing, and as a result of that, we need to recognise that the services will change, and how can nurses play an absolute pivotal and significant part in developing there. So we've got to focus in this plan of recognising what the public health needs are and the population health. Expanding roles to recognise this is quite exciting, The shift to community and neighbourhood care is something that you will hear being discussed across Wales at the moment, and nurses are keen to get involved in that because they see the opportunity of really actually sort of making a difference in those arenas. Team around the person is something that we always recognise. It's about population health need, service need, and then of course, how do we deliver that service to meet that individual person? So we are pivotal actually, and we have an interface with many of the professionals and carers who deliver care to people. And therefore, we are actually a touch point actually on a number of aspects. We see this and we take this as an opportunity for nurses to really drive and actually sort of be involved in actually that care, not always delivering it all of the time, but being pivotal in the leadership element of providing actually safe quality care to that patients. We are a touch point between patients, and we're actually everywhere across the actual healthcare sector. So we will work with collaboratively with other healthcare professions in order to make sure that that individual person receives the right care, the right time, in the right place, by the right people. So if we move forward, and then of course supporting our workforce. This is where we've listened to actually what our current nursing workforce, how they feel, what they want to do to actually aspire to, and what could support them in actually to deliver that and to get care more safely. So we are focusing on their well-being, making sure that they actually have a good work-life balance, what supports them in their work, because we've heard actually of situations where, yes, there are improvements that need to be made. Nurses are always aspirant leaders in all of the areas that we actually develop our careers in, and therefore it's important to support that from actually that registrant right through to consultant nurse level as well. Our career framework is actually really important, and everybody actually wants to see that because that will benefit them, and that's what they want to see. They want to see their personal development being able actually to improve care. And that's actually where their continuous professional development comes in as well. And yes, Welsh language is absolutely important. Being that touch point and that interface with the majority of patients, we are sort of actually encouraging more of our sort of workforce to actually have that conversation in Welsh, even actually if it's actually sort of just actually a hello and an indication that you recognise there are some people whose first language is Welsh, and how we're encouraging them to develop their Welsh language skills as well. I'll move on to the next page, the next slide, and this is actually really our next steps. So this is actually a really exciting time for nursing in Wales. It is an opportunity, and this is actually where we will actually be quite clear that Wales welcomes the opportunity and invites people to come and be educated to become nurses in Wales. It is a great place actually to be educated, and we will actually want to attract people into Wales to do this. Exciting times ahead for nursing, real opportunities for nurses to work collaboratively and actually developing their profession as well. So alongside actually those prioritisations, we're actually keen to say we will actually develop a very specific implementation plan. We have got the clinical leads from our health boards helping us to design and develop this plan going forward. And we will actually be holding a conference to launch this, subject to your approval, actually in March, and then working with all of our health boards and our exec directors of nursing to really actually convey this back to the nursing workforce within their organisation. This is a document for nurses, and we actually want to produce a summary so they can relate and see where they can play a part to actually sort of develop and implement it, but as well as that, to benefit from it as well. So I hope actually the members are happy to take any questions. This is for your approval.
So can I open that for questions? Dr. Sherman,
Thank you very much, Chair. So I think the first thing we should note as a board, how we acknowledge the amount of work that's gone into this particular plan, because the plan requires partnership and it requires us working together with key individuals in that being the case. And so I think we should acknowledge the individuals who've been part of developing this particular plan. What I would say, it is incredibly ambitious, and that's welcomed, and that's welcomed for Wales, that it's ambitious. The narrative is very ambitious, particularly when we're saying this is within a 5-year period. So my questions really are two. Firstly, is in relation to the accountability and responsibility for the delivery of this plan. My view is that this is not just about HEIW, it's a whole system. And therefore, I am looking for assurance, and I'm sure the board is looking for assurance, that other key partners will take active leadership in the delivery of this plan. And I'm sure the board would look to see to what extent they are providing that leadership in the delivery of the plan. So that's my first question. If I may, the second question relates to the implementation and the next steps. As I said, it is very ambitious. Within the narrative, there are some very challenging things discussed, particularly around, for example, integrated roles, around the role of public health and population health, etc. Things that we've tried to tackle for many years, but it says in the plan that we are going to do that. So in terms of the implementation plan, I am looking for assurance that the actions that are noted and the ambition that is described, that we will have a clear pathway within that implementation plan to demonstrate measurable actions that we can hold organisations and ourselves to account in terms of delivery.
Do you want to come back on that, Archie? Yes, in terms of active accountability, and thank you, Archie. I'd like to echo to the thanks to my team who's been developing this. It's been an extensive piece of work, but I'd like to extend my big thanks to everybody external to this organisation as well. You're absolutely right, John, in terms of accountability, and I've got this commitment of executive directors in nursing and their engagement, and even actually last week, you know, they did come back and recognise that they need to play a big part in the development of this plan, and they are quite sort of keen in terms of the public health role. Actually, that's quite something that many of us, definitely the ones that you are health visitors and public health nurses, actually quite passionate about. And there are people actually out in the system wanting to work with HEIW to make that change happen. So the engagement of others, and we will actually communicate and socialise this extensively, not just to the nursing profession, it will be to others as well, to recognise what part we want to play. And I agree with you, when it comes to the implementation, we will not be doing that on our own, we will be doing it actually with others as well. So absolutely agree that that's needed. Can't wait.
So, Chair, sorry, can I just, so I'm presuming the implementation plan will be coming back to board for us to look at that, to ensure that we've got assurance that the actions and the narrative is reflected within the plan.
Alex?
Yeah, so I think a couple of points really. It's been, been great to finally get this one done, because this is such a huge priority, and it was a priority in the workforce strategy, and it's such a huge part of the workforce. So it is good that we've got this plan which seeks to coordinate and make coherent really all the different pieces of work that are going on around the nursing workforce, which was part of the idea at the start, was that there has never really been this workforce plan for this profession before. But also within that, as John said, to try and really be ambitious in thinking about more and different. And I think that, hopefully we've landed that. So thanks to Lisa's team, thanks to all the other people in the organisation who also really played a critical role, particularly Shami's team with the data and the modelling, because that's been really important. And, it does cut across so many different areas of what we do. I think in terms of hold to account, we can't hold to account because we don't have that relationship. So what we have to do is work in partnership and make sure that there is that common objective at the heart of this, and that's what this process has sought to do by having that engagement all the way through. And then in terms of implementation, I think, you know, when we come on to talk about the retention plan, for example, you know, we'll see an example of how working nationally and locally in a communities and practice approach, rather than a, you know, you've got to do this by this deadline, is probably a methodology we should employ a lot more. And the final point is obviously this does need to be resourced. We have got some resources already because obviously we're set up to do things like this. But obviously the pace with which we can get on with implementation of those actions will depend on what resources we can make available. And that is still subject to us understanding that financial application. What we've done with other plans is to have what we call a minimal viable project, which is kind of, you know, project management speak, but essentially means, you know, a project management lead and some clinical lead time to support us in taking all the actions. With the mental health plan, obviously we've had a lot more than that because that was fully funded. So there's a range, and that will dictate the pace of the actions we can take forward. But certainly the partnership approach has been taken so far will continue to be sort of notice of one that really go forward.
To be honest with you, it's John raised some of the questions. I'm echoing what John said with regards to, you know, because you've got the complexity of so many other organisations involved, it's that buy-in that really does the implementation on what success looks like, so that you can actually measure it tangibly. And that's really part of what John said. I'd certainly like the assurance through the implementation plan, which ensures being given consideration.
I'd just like to echo, I think it's an excellent piece of work, and thanks to everyone who's pulled it together. And I think it complements some of the other papers we're going to see later. You know, obviously we need to ensure that nursing continues to be an attractive profession to come into, and really welcome all the work that's going on around the increasing access and mobility into the profession. And then, of course, not losing at the other end and the retention plan. So, yeah, really pleased to see this here today. Support.
Thank you. Lisa, I think I'm asking the board to approve this plan. We will very much welcome the action plan. And I think you can understand that the board will take real interest in how this pans out. Mae'r gwaith i roed y pethau ar y papur wedi gorffen nawr. The paper's written. Mae'r amser nawr i'r tynnu popeth allan o'r papur ac gwneud rhywbeth mawr i'r poblogoedd Cymru. Gwneud yn siŵr bod nysion yn byw yn gryf. The future of our Welsh NHS really sits with making sure that these professions, particularly nursing, are alive, kicking and futuristic. And that's where mae'r dyfodol yn bwysig mawr. Right, okay, thank you very much everybody. You must say really well done.
Oh, team work.
Yeah. Time for a cup of tea and a Mary biscuit. This has been a travail of a real travail.
It's been a lot of biscuits.
Okay. Agenda item 3.2. Update on national programmes, or rather, update on the HEIW impact on national programmes. Yeah.
Yeah. And these are the programmes that primarily the national programmes team have been involved in. So I'm conscious that when we talk about national programmes, mental health is also in there, and obviously got a slightly separate arrangement for implementing the actions around mental health in the course plan. So this primarily covers those areas, so primary care, planned care, which includes cancer and diagnostics, and urgent and emergency care. We've also included in here the work that Ian's team has been doing around further development in industry academy as well. Because that fits, I suppose, in terms of boxes, it fits quite neatly in the planned care and diagnostics part of the paper. I think what we've tried to capture in the paper are those areas where we've implemented some strategic workforce plans. So year one of the primary care workforce plan, also the diagnostic workforce plan, and of course we developed and launched the genomic workforce plan this year as well. But in addition to that, the team does a lot of good work, I think, in terms of engaging with, you know, the NHS executive in Wales and strategic clinical networks to understand what priorities need to be taken forward and how we can contribute in terms of some of the workforce priorities in education and training. So again, we've captured in here some of the pieces of work that they're doing around that. So you'll see some pieces of work around things like competency framework in palliative care and end-of-life services. We're working within the planned care arena on looking at the theatre workforce and how we can raise standards, professional standards across operating theatre staff across Wales. So I think there's a real mix of things here that the team is involved in. I guess the important thing is with everything that we do, we're trying to demonstrate that actually we're either improving the quality of education training or increasing the number of education training places in Wales, or looking at how we can support development of the workforce through improved data, but also development of some of these competency frameworks, so that across the board we're raising some of the professional standards. So within hopefully a fairly brief succinct paper, I think we try to capture a lot of different areas and hopefully some really good work the team have been involved with. Just a couple of points that I just wanted to draw out. I think this year's probably been quite a challenging year for the team in terms of developing new working relationships, both with colleagues in the NHS executive. We've seen that establishing and evolving itself during the course of the year. I think in some areas we've already forged some really good working relationships. Some areas they're probably still in some of the early stages, and that's really important if we're going to tease out what the real workforce and education and training priorities are that take forward collectively going forward. So they worked hard on that. They also engage with a number of the strategic clinical networks that are in place across Wales. So there's 13 in total. So for a small team, we have to be quite selective in where we focus our time and attention. But that is something that increasingly we'll need to do more of, I think, as we go through the next year. And then I guess the final thing I just wanted to raise is we have a very small core program team that does a lot of this work, and then we attract bits of funding for specific pieces of work. So the nature of the time limited funding and a number of the staff who are on work either on a session or part-time basis or a fixed term basis means we have to be really agile in the way that we bring staff in with the right skills and expertise, do the work, and then move on to another piece of work as well. So it's quite a fluid area this in terms of making sure we're hitting the right areas as regards to national priorities. Clearly, as we go through the next year, we know that the things that we're doing and how they impact on delivery within the NHS in Wales will be really, really important as well. So I think we've always got an eye on how we're impacting on the wider system and making that positive difference. So I have to pause there. The report is very much a a paper for assurance today, but happy to take questions. Yeah, thanks.
Any questions or comments?
The comment really, because paper covers an enormous amount of ground. And it's really good to see that summarised so succinctly. And for me, I take out two messages that the team have been really responsive to service need, but also anticipating future service need. Lots of great work going on here, which really will make a difference on the ground. So thank
John?
Yeah, I agree, Jane. Really good paper, fantastic work, and I took reassurance, I think, from the recognition that the relationships down in different stages, and urge, I think, as to breast factors not find it concrete with those various parts of the system. My question, I suppose, and it relates to something I think I've probably raised before, which is there's some great stuff going on. I mean, all the rest of it, all these advanced clinical skills. And I think you've touched on it at the end, Lynn, which is, I think I've asked the question before, how do we know that these skills are being utilised and are they making a difference? And have we got that followed through? And it may be that it's not our role, but somebody might ask us about the investment in all these sort of trained 4 times as many endoscopists, art skills. I think I asked it on intermittent prescribing. Is there value from all this investment? So I guess how do we square the circle, as it were?
Yeah. So I think as we implement some of these plans, part of the ongoing evaluation will be not only how many people have we trained, so some of this will be taken off the list about accelerating training as well as training more people. But it will be important that we actually we do measure. So what does that mean in terms of people going into the workforce in different parts of the NHS in Wales? So I think probably looking at that across individual health board areas. And I think so you mentioned the Endoscopy Academy. There's a focus on the facility that we've got in South Wales, but actually we would want to expand that further so that actually your point about developing skills in all parts of NHS Wales it is then one of the benefits of doing that. So I think in each of the areas we've talked about how we evaluate not only have we trained more people, there's the quality of training being better, but actually can we then track that through to actually as a result of this we've got a bigger and more capable workforce.
Yes.
And I think it's still a work in progress to be able to demonstrate that.
Thanks. It's a really good paper and enormous amount of work going on, as everyone said. I was sort of really interested in the section at the bottom, which is on page 7 under the governance and risk, and I was trying to get my head around all these different forums, groups, programs, and I thought if I put this on a line on a diagram, it would look like a spider's web. And I just think because this is
Not
about,
as logical as a spider.
no, maybe not, and probably not as pretty, but this is about improving services for patients. It's, this is Jeff Sadak, and what are they getting from this? And I suppose it links to Jill's question, because I work, well, not worrying, maybe that's too strong, but we have our people doing all this work, which is absolutely right and excellent, but it's that assurance that it's being translated into delivery, which I know is not our role, So whose role is it? And I can use an example. You talk about theatre workforce transformation. There's also a theatre utilisation programme. So are the two coming together? Because which is great, I've seen nods. But is that an example? Is that coming right through? Because there was a really bad, horrendous report a couple of weeks ago about cancer services. There's a lot of work going on to improve that HEIW are very much at heart of. But I suppose I'm struggling to see how to make sure all these people who are doing all this work really feel that it's making a difference. We know it is, but the patients aren't seeing that, people aren't seeing that, because I'm not sure who's responsible for making it happen. And it'd be useful maybe to know how that is happening, or maybe it's just too complex at the moment. It's the wrong question.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different questions in there. So yes, the landscape is complex, and the meeting structure is complex, and that is a risk, I think, in terms of communication and clarity on priorities. And there are conversations going on about that at the moment. I think as a result of that as well, we're not always sure that the right workforce questions are being asked at the right time. So we're trying to get in there and make sure that people are asking the right questions, not answering the question themselves and then telling us what they think the answer is, if you see what I mean. It's a different conversation you'd have about what the challenge is, and you come up with a different solution with the kind of expertise we've got in this organisation versus what's available to the system. That's obviously our job, isn't it, to be the expert. So and so there has been a lot of progress over recent years in actually getting really plugged into those national programmes, and we've got a seat on all the boards, and we're part of those conversations, which is good, so we can kind of make sure we're catching those boards more quickly. I think and so some of what we have to do as well is recognise actually funding most of this, with a few exceptions in there, through our underspend. So we have not been given money to set up this response to the national programmes. We've given money for specific projects like the theatres project and like the palliative care competency. But in the round, the resource, we've thought that this was important, so we've kind of restructured ourselves to look outwards to those national programmes, because as James said, these are the wicked NHS issues and we have to be. And that's why it can look like a bit of a random list. It's not a random list. It has been worked out as a priority within each of those programmes, but it's not all encompassing and it's not comprehensive. I think your comment about the evaluation, I think it is our job. So I wouldn't say it's not our job to find out how our skills have been used in practice. I very much think it is our job. And some of these things are still quite new. So I think we're still in the process of building in that evaluation to, first of all, things getting the training implemented, then obviously it's really important. And I do think that's part of our role, because whilst we might not have any control over it, we can influence it, can't we, then, by actually doing that. Well, actually, on an independent prescribing, 5 out of 10 people felt that they couldn't practice their skills when they went back to the workplace because of a lack of supervision or a lack of understanding or whatever. So how do you tackle that issue? So I do think that's part of our job, and I don't think we can just see it as so it's that end to end. But that's work in progress. But keep asking those questions because they are the right questions to ask us. Even if we struggle to answer them at the start, we will get better at answering.
Again, Judith and I are highlighting the same things, but I mean, we're sitting together, but one of them was that very thing about saying we've selected these areas as we see them as priorities, but then it is that follow through to see what the difference is. And we see in the report it says they've increased numbers, but it's that I'm a more detailed person. I quite like to know how many and where and what impact it's having. And I know that will come to what you just said, but also picking up this issue about the complications of all these various organisations being involved there and where we sit in it. We can't afford, with the system as it is, to be saying we're having duplicate conversations and we're not, and there are issues about the decision, because it's just so important. And I really value what you're saying about how you're trying to get in there and influence that and make and try and work through that, because, as you say, if we're going to make a difference for our population, that's absolutely.
I wonder whether it's time to have a parable. Because one of the things that's very clear to me is that we are a constant cross spectrum of different groupings and people with different interests and focus. But education, training, workforce planning, there are some constant principles. So I wonder whether or not there should be a guide to success, or a guide to things that have been proven useful as we've used our resources to develop some of these plans. And I think a checklist is not a bad idea to ensure it whenever a group is set up, and inevitably groups do get set up, and I think it would be really good to have a workforce education training checklist that actually sets up some principles, so that we're not having to duplicate, triplicate, efforts. And I think that might have quite an effect, because simple things usually are more effective than anything complex. And then internally, do we have an idea of how successful our inputs are? And what are the things that get in the way? And those things we need to transfer to those people who are in leadership positions, who are thinking about setting up groups. So a parable would be a really good story, like the genomics, like the endoscopy, And because we did these things, because together you considered these things and integrated workforce planning, education and training, at this point, we were able to. And I think showing where it's been able to accelerate, where it's been able to ensure that hard learned skills get into practice, I think that would be a really good way of putting some kind of methodology into what appears to be quite a complex. I've said a lot of words, but I just think there's an opportunity here to stand back and say, these are really good principles that will make your work more effective.
Yes, and I agree. I think being able to tell that story is really powerful. So I think there's an example as we implement those. I think with the impact as we go through, like with the review each type of story. We started to do that in before, and we've used some of these examples in things like a jet lead. Roger said these things can actually really help you solve this really big problem you've got here, helping to join the dots.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, John?
So, a question to be asked. I think this narrative around how we look at what we're doing. All I would say then, just to add to the conversation, is I think we need to be more explicit how we are objectively measuring the contribution our plans make to positive outcomes. I think we may know that. The paper talks about review. The paper talks about leadership being evaluated. You talk about being embedded throughout. But I think we need to be more explicit and more objective in terms of how we assess our impact.
I think there's some very strong messages there. So, I'm asked, members are asked to note for assurance the progress on the work being undertaken by the National Programmes team to support primary care, planned care and urgent and emergency care services in line with national priorities. And we're asking for us to have a discipline, really, to show impact, value, and I think credibility. I think the credibility thing about the go-to organisation to actually facilitate, enable and consolidate work to ensure that the workforce actually can meet the aspiration of these workforce of these groupings. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's about better outcomes. Okay, national retention programmes. Croeso Zoe and Denise. Croeso gynnes iawn. Lisa, are you leading on this? No? Who's in? Helen, sorry, I'm sorry.
No,
Started with nursing, but
no,
working partners.
absolutely, and I think really echoing some of the themes today. So welcome to Zoe and to Denise. Denise who's travelled up from Halvar Health Board this morning to be with us to really demonstrate the impact that the retention work that we've been leading at HEIW is having at a local level. So I know that if I talk through the paper that is there, I will be stealing Zoe and Denise's
They'll have read the paper.
Indeed. So I will hand over now to Zoe and to Denise. Thank you.
Bwrdd, and thank you for inviting us today. I'm Zoe Gibbs, the National Retention Lead here in HEIW. For the interest of time and to provide an opportunity for a bit of discussion about the progress, we've shortened the slide deck just to include really a very brief part of the approach and then to look at some of the impacts that we've made to date. So as you can see there's multiple aspects of the retention programme that I won't go into in detail because it is contained within the paper, but through the appointment of my post and also local retention leads across Wales, such as Denise, we come together to look at a community of practice to innovate, learn and share good practice together. Obviously, retention is a multifaceted and wicked problem a lot of the time. So it takes a great deal of innovation and head scratching and joint working, which I think has been one of the major successes since the establishment of the programme. We also work tirelessly on collaboration and engagement, as retention isn't something that you can simply do to people in organisations. This is very much based on leadership change, culture change, and creating working environments where staff want to belong, thrive and stay. So to support that collaboration, engagement, ownership, empowerment, we have also developed a range of resources and toolkits and digital resources such as the National Retention Hub that's available through the Bwrdd platform. A great deal of our time over the last few months since the programme has been established has been based upon data, which I think has been a learning curve for us all, particularly admitting clinician. So as a nurse, I didn't think I'd ever come out and say that data I love, and I'm actually now seeing the benefit of a data-driven approach to retention. I know I'm crossing the gap. So we've worked really hard to establish the baseline. I think long coming into post, we knew we had this elephant-sized problem of retention, but what we didn't necessarily know was why we would be able to drill down into manageable chunks to actually quality improve and address retention. So through undertaking our self-assessments, through developing our matrices, looking at staff survey and staff voice through stay interviews, exit questionnaires, those sorts of things, we've been able to start to build the story of retention and to implement a data-driven and targeted quality improvement approach, which is the fundamental of the programme. So we now have our key metrics, and a massive thank you to the BI team at HEIW. We've got data dashboards, which have been a complete game changer for the programme. We're now able to target hotspots. We're now able to tell the story, look at areas where we're improving and celebrate success, but also look at what the next steps are. I think Denise's presentation will show you that also. And then we've got a big focus upon spread and scale. You know, this is about a prudent approach. Not all organisations looking at one aspect, trying to get the best benefit we possibly can. And we've had some great news in the last couple of weeks because we've got a successful application to be part of the National Spread and Scale Academy as a group. So we've now also going to get some more expertise support and be part of a wider collaborative spread and scale, which is great. Next slide, please. So moving on to the benefit and impact, as that's got to be the focus of every programme and intervention that we give. We're already seeing early signs of improvement through reviewing our metrics. I also network with NHS England retention leads, and I think we're getting them a little bit jealous there with our dashboards because they haven't got anything but a system-wide approach. But also just it took them over 2 years to realise any downward trend in turnover. So it gives a sort of flavour of a benchmark. So already we're seeing a downward trend in rolling staff turnover. And when we're saying turnover in the programme, that is staff leaving the system, so staff leaving NHS Wales, not leaving organisations. And it is measured on a rolling period over a year, month by month. So since the start of the programme, we've seen a 0.4% reduction in all staff turnover, 0.6% in nursing and midwifery. And although on the surface they seem small figures, when you think the turnover rate is around 8% at the start of the programme, it is a significant improvement and something to really celebrate and build on. We're also seeing downward trends in voluntary resignations. And the reason why I'm really excited on this, and it is across all staff groups, and to give you a picture of the sorts of numbers of staff we're talking, this would be less resignations, 400 staff across NHS Wales and 200 nurses. So it puts it into sort of effective numbers we're talking about. And why I particularly love this measure is we're trying to stop staff leaving through poor experience and through dissatisfaction. So voluntary resignations is one of our key metrics to look at the reasons why people are leaving. We've also got a stable churn rate, and our churn rate definition is staff moving between organisations across NHS Wales. So there's not currently any hotspots where we're seeing large amounts of staff moving from an organisation. There is a stable balance both in and out of all organisations. And finally, the retire return rate. Again, this is key. We know we've got an ageing workforce where retirement is high, and the worry is that we're going to end up with a workforce without the knowledge, skills, experience and expertise that we require. But currently the return rate is mimicking retire rate, so we are managing to maintain that wisdom within the service. But I think we need to remember that that's not going to keep, staff can't stay forever, so succession planning is still key, and that's going to be one of the priorities going forward. Next slide, please. So talking about next steps, over the coming year, we want to evaluate and develop and refine our data collection approaches so that we've got even more insight. So to give an example of that, currently within ESR, reasons for leaving, we have an unfortunate other box. So when you look at the predominant reasons for staff leaving NHS Wales, to date 5,000 have gone for other reasons. But the actual drop-down menus are quite complex. I think there's 17 different voluntary resignation reasons. So I'm working currently with the National ESR team to try and simplify that and actually give managers definitions of what each option is. So hopefully we can get away from using the other box. We need to develop further national tools and resources, and we need to use our data to identify and support staff-specific data-driven retention improvement. So currently, as I said, we're seeing downward trends across staff groups. However, medical and dental and estate staff are starting to rise and are causing concern. So as a community of practice, we've all identified that. Sounds like a hell of a lot. That is becoming a national focus to look at that, but we've already made a significant impact into nursing and midwifery. We also want to look at development and legacy mentorship. It's one of our major challenges for retention is the first 2 to 4 years post-qualification across staff groups. So the evidence tends to suggest if we can get staff to stay for that period, they stay for a career. So we need to do a great deal of work to see how we can use the expertise of those in later stages of career to support new starters and new registrants. And as part of that, we're linking in with universities as well, Cardiff University in particular, to work with students to try and determine what would make them stay and what support they need, rather than keep assuming we know what people need. So that'll be a really interesting piece of work. And then, as I said, a massive concentration on spread and scale of success. Stage I hand over to Denise.
Thank you so much for having me. So if we can move on to the next slide, if you click again, I'll bring it. There we go, amazing, thank you. Brilliant. So thanks so much for having me today, and for Zoe for inviting me along. I promise I won't be too long talking about the work that we've done in Bwrdd to support retention and reduce turnover. Something I'm really passionate about, something that I've been quite privileged to be part of, I think, over the last almost 12 months now in post. If we could move on to the next slide. It feels so funny saying that. So I was quite fortunate when I joined in this role that there's already been a tremendous amount of work that's been going on in Bwrdd to support retention across all sectors. So when I joined in post, we were lucky enough that we already had a nursing retention turnover group, and also one for medical retention as well. So some of the work that I've been involved in is continuing that great work that's been happening, but also new initiatives and looking at how we measure our retention and our turnover. So we've set ourselves targets. So we've been looking at for nursing since the retention groups have started for a reduction 0.5%, for medical 1%, and AHPs and healthcare scientists also 1%. So initially we've had the nursing and medical groups. We're also looking now, and we have started the work setting up the AHP and healthcare scientist group. So this involves collecting data, looking at the needs of these staff groups. That doesn't mean that we're not looking at all staff groups in entirety as well. We've picked those specific areas due to sort of the nature of the turnover in those groups, but we will be looking at wider areas, as Zoe mentioned, as well, for sort of estates and facilities. But those are the primary concerns that have been sort of an area that we've been looking at for the last couple of years, and obviously with the nurse retention action plan as well being very prominent. And we've also been using our data. So data, as Zoe said, is a big thing, looking at what it's telling us. And, as we all know, data and ESR figures only show a small portion of what's actually happening in our services. So it doesn't give us the whole picture. So we've been working on looking at discovery reports of retention. So really researching what our staff are telling us. Are we using a really data-informed, robust approach? We've also been involving our stakeholders in our retention work. So again, as Zoe mentioned, retention isn't something you do to a service, it's something you work with them on. So we've been working with leaders and key stakeholders, and also speaking with staff as well about what their needs are, looking at things as well like staff survey, and working with organisational development teams to see, what is happening on the ground. And we're now looking at projects, or we have looked at projects recently, as Zoe mentioned, with stay conversations, flexible working, and collecting staff stories. So if we can move on to the next slide. So some of the work that we've been doing to support retention in our organisation, I put under the headings that are in sort of the nurse retention action plan. So the key areas that we feel we need to support retention. Some of this work that's been ongoing is around sort of supporting our international nurses or international educated nurses. We sort of had feedback from the service that they didn't feel so confident applying for maybe progression and, promotion roles. So we implemented some support there in terms of presentation skills, recruitment skills, job application skills, in terms of training and development. So we were quite reactive in that sense that we're listening to the needs of what our staff are saying. And I've got a lovely example on one of the slides about a staff story about a recently, or maybe not so recently now, promoted member of staff that came through via our IEN cohorts. And we've also worked a lot on development and career planning, so leaders having a big focus, and leadership development having a big focus on supporting staff retention. Things around flexible retirement as well. So as we mentioned, are staff empowered to know about their retention, so their retirement plans, and is that supporting their retention and the retirement return? And also evaluating impact. So we are very big now at the moment, and have been hopefully since the beginning of the programme, on evaluating the actual impact of the work we're doing. So are we seeing reductions in figures? But also we want a healthy workforce as well. So it's not just about retaining our staff. We want them to be happy, we want them to be engaged, and we want them to be healthy in our work. It's a big priority for us. So valuing our staff and looking at how our staff want to be valued and rewarded has also been important. If we can have next slide, please. So our progress so far, so as you can see, we are sort of on a downward trend. We have had a blip recently with a slight increase in turnover. So just to be completely transparent with you, it's not been a perfectly downhill journey. I would love to say that here, but it's going to be realistic. We are going to see certain pressures as well on our staff. And, you know, it's important that when we look at our turnover, we also look at things like vacancies. There is a plethora of other data that we have access to and that we've been looking at. But just to show some of the figures that hopefully we are on a reduction now. And we are quite lucky that when we look at sort of the HEIW dashboards, we are one of the better performing health boards in Wales. So we do have a low turnover rate of staff that are leaving Bwrdd to leave NHS in Wales altogether. So I've been quite lucky from that. The next slide, please. So some of our staff stories. So we've been working really hard to capture what our staff are saying to us, and we've got a lovely couple of examples here on what our staff have been saying. So Sonia, our lovely A&E nurse, one of the happiest people I've ever had the opportunity to meet. So lovely, really inspiring. She joined us in our 2022 cohort. She came from Kerala in our international nurse recruitment, and she recently has been promoted from a band 5 to a band 6 in our Glangwili A&E. Yes, which is wonderful. And she very kindly came to one of our policy meetings to talk about her story, and she's been sort of speaking to board as well about her example and her experience, you know, the great support that she's received. She talks a lot around the support she received from her manager to go to interview, how supportive the interview panel was. So it's a lovely sort of example that, you know, we want to showcase that it is possible to develop, and that, you know, we are listening to our staff and hopefully giving them a great experience. So she has a lovely experience of A&E in Glangwili in Carmarthen, and she's a lovely ambassador, a wonderful ambassador for that team there. And we've also got Ionawr as well. So I met with Ionawr to talk about her experience of supporting flexible working. She is a fantastic ambassador, not just for flexible working, but also career development as well. She's a really great example, and I think it's really important that we have, you know, our clinical nursing examples of where things are going really well, where we've got best practice to show, you know, it can be done. We can all work together, and to provide that sort of peer example, peer support of where it's going well. So next slide, please. So our key priorities for 2025. So there are some areas here that we are looking at specifically. In terms of our sort of medical and nursing workforce, because we've only recently established our AHP and healthcare scientists groups, we will be looking at those trends in turnover and retention. But we have seen even a small upwards trend in medical and nursing turnover. So we're really working with those groups and understanding what are the push and pull factors. Flexible working, so work-life balance, unfortunately, is it's in our top 3 biggest reasons for voluntary resignation. So we're working on projects to look at how we measure flexibility within teams, looking to pilot projects there to see what we can impact. Stay conversations and exit interviews. So we're running a pilot with Paris Health Board on stay. And we're running that across different staff groups, so hopefully nursing, medical, AHP, estates and admin groups, to understand managers can do to support that and support staff staying. And we're also looking at performance data, so not just how we review our turnover data, but are our leaders empowered to use that data in their day-to-day, so empowering them to make culture change, to understand their turnover and their exit interview data, and obviously staff stories. So we want to get more stories from staff. At the moment, we're running a project called Day in the Life of, so focusing on our 3rd year nursing students to understand what they need, what they want, and what their experiences and work have been, positive and negative, hopefully to sort of promote the student, you know, work that we're doing, but also to understand, you know, why maybe people aren't feeling supported, or maybe why people are leaving and following their place. So those on my side, that's the sort of information I've given. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sort of bombard everyone with lots of information in one go. I'm very passionate about it, and I do feel very lucky to have been part of this. I'm really excited about the following year, and I do feel, you know, obviously sing your nurse praises. We are really engaged in it, and I really have a good feeling for the next 12 months. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So thank you to Zoe and Denise. I think, you know, what we've heard there is a very much a can-do attitude to changing cultures and changing people's experience. The link between the national, you know, our national work and the real drive for spread and scale and learning across, and passion for making a difference, I think, in the workplace. Some complexity doesn't always go smoothly, but actually I think some of the ambitions and using the data to be able to focus in at the right spot. So thank you for that, and obviously any questions, the team will be happy to take them.
Any comments or questions from colleagues? Go on, then,
Am I allowed? I mean, this is quite new in post, so wasn't there really from my end of my period being there. But one thought, I mean, you know, having been on the board there, it's brilliant to see this. So I think going back to our previous discussion, this really does show where, when we evaluate what HEIW impact can be, this is it. I would also say that this had the support of the board to do this work in the early stages, and also very much the support of the workforce director. I think it is key to success that you do have that support to enable these programs to go on, and, you know, to see where Halvar was in turnover to where it is now. That is the evidence that these programs do work. So yeah, I'm very proud to see this here. I suppose it did bother me, Helen, when it says that 2 of the leads have left their post. And I think that, again, this is about, for me, the evaluation of how these programs can work. So those organisations can look again as to why they don't have the leads within the health board. Because it's great, but I'll shut up.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you both. It's fantastic to see the progress over the last, well, probably just 15 months actually, since we brought this proposal to the board and decided we were going to spend some of our flexibility on doing this. And it was great to sort of hear back now on the step that we were hearing from HE at the time, because obviously they were running the statute protocol. So thank you very much for all the work. It is fantastic. I think we have got a slot on the NHS Leadership Board in February to take this story in there, because I think the funding issue is one we want more attention to, because, you know, we didn't know when we started this programme what we were entering into. So, you know, we gave that sort of 2-year sort of timeline, but I think we would be stupid to walk away now and not carry this on. So I think we've got to try and find the resource from somewhere to, you know, give people the confidence that this programme is going to extend. But we do need some support to do that, and the reasons that we proposed to earlier on to smart financial positions. So that's the purpose really of taking that to the leadership board, is to draw attention to that. People see the progress and to know that actually, as you say, you know, investing in this makes big value for money. But yeah, great and really inspiring, and, you know, exactly what we imagined. So that's
Jane, Lisa, then
Thank you. It was really good to get those 2 different perspectives, the national and then the sort of real world on the ground. Not disparaging national. Anyway, it doesn't surprise me that flexible working is up there in your top 3 issues, and I suspect that's at the national level
Across Wales.
Absolutely. Because when I've been out in hospitals, in particular, that's the thing that people wanted to talk to me about. 2 questions, both really data, because I'm a bit of a data nerd too. And one is about collecting destinations. Where are people going to? Are they leaving for agency work, for instance? It'd be good to actually collect that if it were possible.
I was just starting to look at that in how about
And a second one is really following that agency theme. Is it possible to start to see any correlation between declining costs of agency, hopefully, and increased retention?
That was my question, so I don't jump into this because, you know, hidden within that small story that you presented was that one line from that particular ward, which now says, you know, we don't use bank or agency. And I thought, if that, you know, there's your story, there's your scale, and so that hit me as something like, oh,
I think you should absolutely ping that message next time you give the presentation, right?
I was going to say the
Triple line.
the agency are going to become part of the metrics in place too. What we're trying to get is hours of the common agency utilised as far as expenditure, just because of an agency obviously doesn't necessarily need a decrease, but that's something we're very keen on, along with scoping, recruitment and onboarding costs. We've done some work just with nursing. It's about £12,000 a year without training costs. So there's significant financial savings that are hidden.
It's the value to the organisation. It's that care, quality and safety.
I think, and I work with Zoe actually, so this is actually how we work across actually with partners, isn't it? Actually, in terms of nursing workforce plan, obviously Zoe actually is actually working with us actually quite collectively on the back of that agency. It's not just one thing, so there's a lot of work going on actually to reduce that agency spend. I can say yes, nurse agency spend is actually coming down actually in Wales, but it's not just, we can't identify what the key factor is actually that's making that reduction. But these initiatives are very, very valued by nursing, and nurses are feeding back actually at how valuable they're actually finding this intervention, and it's part of, and we link it with this in our plan as well. So this is the cross-sectional working. But absolutely creative to what you're actually doing and how about. And I know Zoe's actually coming to exec directors of nursing actually to communicate. The more we engage to show the benefit, the better.
Go on, data.
So that information will be available locally and bringing that together more at a local level. We don't hold agency data in the warehouse at the moment. Our focus of attention at the moment is bringing sickness data into a position that is reported and that is accurate, working with local based teams. We're focusing on that. Then the plan agency, followed by rostering and allocation. So that's the order. But it doesn't mean it's not available and we can't be making sort of links and understanding ways. But to get the level of reporting I think you're thinking about, we're not up there yet. There's definitely an element.
So this is the boring bit now, right? So I want to change the wording of the recommendation for the board. I want to say that the board should be reassured that something good is happening to the benefit of the workforce and to the benefit of the patients. And secondly, I think we should ask the note for assurance the progress made against our plans. Can I ask that? And then I just want to say personal something. That's probably one of the most adequate presentations we've had to the board in my view. Okay?
That's a compliment.
But what's really interesting is that this is compassionate leadership in action, and that's one of the, you know, this is an example of if you do things with a good heart, with people, not to people, you encourage. The reaction of that nurse, the A&E nurse. I mean that's what I mean by a Powerbomb.
Absolutely.
That absolutely nails why you would do it. But can I suggest that you don't rest on your laurels? keep being as negative as the joy allows you to be, and keep progressing. Diolch o galon yn dod. Hyfryd iawn. Thank you very much. Right. Dental workforce plan update. Tom.
Thank you very much. So I'll take the paper as read. A few points just to pull out a bit. It's the start of work really to try and take us to a more data-informed approach to the workforce planning we talked about, touched on today. We're considering in the context of the overarching Welsh Government system reform in relation to dentistry, and also with regards to our primary care workforce plan that will be reported separately, because multiple actions apply equally to dentistry in the context of that. So mentorship, leadership, management, retention, and they all feature in that primary care workforce plan. So this paper focuses on the 6 dental specific actions that we have in train. As you will all be aware, dentistry is a very complex landscape. We're doing a lot of work with stakeholders across them. All of these actions require that partnership working. And as if you look at those actions, you can break them down really into a few that are related to specific gaps, data informed. We know there's a deficit, the dental therapists, both north and south. Those arrangements are in place, but the increase in places that are required to support that development will be dependent, of course, on funding and approval. I think it flags and the graph, the picture in the paper illustrates really the important point here, which is the overlap of skill sets. It's not just about dentists. All workforce plan is about the whole of the oral care profession. And there are multiple professions in there with overlapping skill sets. There is also action 1 is based on evidence that's emerged, which is around challenges for the dental nurse training program and the need to review and reform. Now, the review of that is coming to the end stage. We're expecting recommendations in the near future about how we take next steps to improve the quality and output of the dental nursing program, and we will report back to those recommendations. The second action in there very much is related to the foundation dentistry, and again the evidence about what highlights through feedback that is gathered that doesn't provide satisfaction in the current approach to delivery of training. Moving about is something that increasingly causes dissatisfaction, and there's considerable evidence about longitudinal placements, so a focus on developing those and academic opportunities at that early stage. There is also evidence that diversifying the portfolio of experience improves that retention. So we will be implementing those in partnership with our university and monitoring the output. The remaining actions really are probably where the really important bits are, and that's around the data that we've talked about today, identifying all those data gaps, but then really closing those gaps together and using them to start to develop a needs-based workforce model plan. And that is much more than just where people go, where they don't go, and anything like that. This is about understanding our regional populations in Wales, the level and types of the different oral health care that are in those populations, which does vary. As technology changes rapidly, the way in which those are managed changes rapidly. And the service expectations of those populations are different, as is productivity dependent on a number of things. So needs-based modelling requires all of those pillars to be looked at. And that work stream is now established with academic input, as well as the fact that unfortunately look at those gaps and take that forward. So it's very much at an early stage of development, but I think you can see there are some specifics and some wider issues which apply across a lot of our work at HEIW that are relevant and have built into the dental workforce plan. What's there?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tom, for the update report. You answered my question with regards to the dental nursing program where we are in quite fast head. Action 3 left me thinking this is such confusing picture because there are so many individuals individual organisations involved. So you've got the General Dental Council doing a report on workforce patterns. We are doing something on that. We've got Cardiff University, etc. So I guess I was left thinking, to what extent in this arena are we facing duplication and overlap as opposed to coordinating our work together?
I think that's incredibly important because fundamentally, and I think the second word really is sharing, which I think encompasses collaboration. So a function of that outcome, we see ourselves as leading on bringing all those partners together, share that. So that there's an understanding of what data are out there, because there are some data out there we just don't necessarily have good access to it, and there are other data which don't really get captured at all. And it's mapping that landscape and finding out from those partner organisations who is doing what, so that we can then coordinate exactly how we capture it. As the workforce body, obviously we are doing work and we need to have a resource that informs us at that high level to inform that planning. But that doesn't mean we need to collect it all necessarily, it's already there.
Yeah, thanks for the update on it's just a quick question. We say that actions 5 and 6 are costed as part of the education and training plan, which I think whether you're aware 1 to 4 costed.
So we've in terms of delivery of 1 to 4, we've built those into our existing work. Which one is 1? Let me just check. So we've got some extra resource that was funded to support the implementation of the plan in terms of personnel within the organisation, but otherwise most of those actions are incorporated with our agency. So they are core. They're effectively moving towards core business, but they are enhancing effectively the output in those areas. So those are not dependent on. There are part of our commissioning work, for example, changing the programs with foundation.
That's just how it's purchased and managed on the allocations across government. So you did for education and training related to that in 2020 plan, but a lot of the other workforce actions aren't educational training. Right, so we've already funded people in the team to support programs on that.
So just an example, actually, to develop training on this
well, that's a development piece of work that the team would do. When it becomes a commission, then we'll put it as a commission, then we can the education program. And the reason we put that in this one is because we're still not sure what the education training plan is going to be approved at. So it's still subject to that being approved. So it's confusing, but we just thought it kind of assumed that it was approved in the original paper, and obviously we can't assume that. Thank you.
Yeah, and the foundation program exists, so this is refining how it's delivered.
Donna, then Jane.
Yeah, I mean the sort of difficulty that's articulated in the report around actually being able to build workforce models when we don't actually know currently how many people are waiting to see a dentist. So I was interested that there's this dental access portal being developed and it's being rolled out fully in place 2025. So is it anywhere now? And how are people going to know about that to be able to do this routine registering a digital centralised solution? Because it is so critical. There's so many people who can't access dentistry at the moment and are in limbo or are needing to seek private if they can. Of course, so many people are barred from that sort of option. So where's that? And what are we going to
do? It's early stages, because I think there are multiple different bits of data that you're referring to there in that. And I think, the disease prevalence, the population needs, the regionalisation of this. So I think that's a good start. And 89% practice is starting to sort of provide information into that. It's good, but that won't give us the full picture. Public health have a lot of the data, so they're included in the work that we're doing with them, and that particularly around changing population need. In terms of the weighting, that's difficult.
I just, I've almost been, saying it out there, but there's a degree of people who've given up on dentistry. They're just in this limbo now of not being able to access it. So the more we can do to understand the need to be able to develop our workforce to meet that is going to be critical.
That was my question.
So Tom, I read this paper, and you know when you go over Humpback Bridge in a fast car, you know, so you just get that feeling that we're doing an awful lot of things. And the point that unless you've got a clear picture of what it's going to look like, you end up with doing lots and lots of things, which by luck, by opportunity, will be taken up as an NHS service. We can produce more dentists, but will they provide NHS dental services? You can provide more nurses, more therapists, but will they provide more NHS services? So there's a fundamental, I'm going to ask 3 questions. Where's the Chief Dental Officer's vision for dentistry by 2030? By 2035? By 2040? Where's the public health impact assessment for generation Alpha and Beta that are under 12 years old at the minute? And where's the population projection for those people over 75 who won't be able to eat or speak or have developed their 3rd or 4th cancer, and one of those happen to be in the oral cavity? There's a serious issue in here, public and population health issue, which, despite valiant efforts to educate and train, will actually be always doomed to be behind the line. So there's something that fundamentally has to change, and everybody goes back to the contract, you know, the contracting confluence that's conflict that's there. So I think there's a big issue that we could ask: what is the picture? What is the vision? And how can we best help to make that vision material? I think those should be the 3 questions that end up any paper that we produce and put in. But I think it's now time for Chief Dental Officer to paint that picture. And I say the Chief Dental Officer because that's the Chief Dental Officer. Chief Medical Officer might also be the new CMO might also be very interested in this, because it's not just about teeth, it's about lives. If you can't speak, if you've got a cancer, and if your children are doomed to having a dentaless future, it's not good. So I think there's some very big fundamental questions here, and I think the whole of the United Kingdom is probably at sea. That shouldn't mean that we don't call it out every time we're asked to contribute. Paper's great.
No, I agree with what you said. They're hugely important issues.
That's probably one of the blind spots of the public health, population health projection that we really face. And the oral cancers are on the rise despite the drop in smoke. Melanomas in the oral cavity, melanomas on the lips. I mean, we are talking serious life-ending things, let alone a lot of suffering. And the population, the big conversation on the doorstep, and remains that dentistry, access to dental services isn't higher than we're likely to believe. Okay, so I'm asking, please, that the board to note the content of the briefing paper and the progress on the education and training to date for assurance. Yeah, you're happy? Right. We are 20 minutes over. I think 5 minutes comfort break. I think it's important. Shall I ask you to come back for 12:30, please. Croeso nôl pawb, croeso nôl. Lisa, another really important update for us, the duty of quality media report.
Okay. Diolch yn fawr. Actually, I take it that people have actually read the report.
Absolutely.
Right. Right. So, just to remind the quality is an integral part of actually what HEIW does in terms of its first purpose, vision and aims. And what we've actually brought to you is basically a an update of where we were. Because we brought to you in March 2024 an outline of actually what HEIW's plans were. We brought the annual report to you at the annual general meeting last September. And actually, obviously, we are a system partner in actually developing actually our quality standards. And actually, in this actually paper, it just actually elaborates to you in Appendix 1 what we are providing actually today. There's more work to be done. Quality is always an ongoing element. But actually, I'm happy to take any questions. I mean, I think actually what you will see as a key issue is our intent to really listen more to the learner and the student voice, and there are initiatives contained in that plan as to how we plan to take that forward. Happy to take any more questions.
Thank you, Liz. So can I ask board members, have you got questions or comments to make on this paper? Alex, this was a really important moment for HEIW. I've been part of the NHS family. In terms of the aspiration and the challenges for the future, can I think as we've got an education commissioning and quality committee. I think at some point we need to question whether or not that gives this enough focus and undoubtedly the commissioning enough focus. I'd be interested in what the executive think and what the chair of the Education Quality Commission thinks.
Good afternoon.
Well, it strikes me other organisations will have an in-depth quality committee. We've got it embedded in an education and commissioning and quality, and that will work fine as long as it drives it's driving the whole agenda. And I think the executive is probably the best place because it's a lot of work to put more committees in. However, I'm asking in terms of driving this, what more can we do as independent members to support the drive on quality?
We introduced a mechanism of governance actually within the organisation, because you're absolutely right. This quality initiative goes across the whole of HEIW. It's not just in education commissioning. There are elements of it that actually applies to education committee. That does get reported through that mechanism. So the quality assurance process being produced for education is going through that arena. But actually within HEIW, what we're making sure that it's actually being embedded, and there's a mechanism to take DTG and the exec team.
Personally, I don't think committee structure, the other functions is the education control pieces and the have the most direct impact on safety, quality of care. I think we just don't for the sake of it, right? That we have a course through our review and review posts from every director and team. We've got the annual quality report mechanism. I think in which order to
So it comes to all 6 countries. So you've got the annual report and then you've got the 6 monthly report.
And in terms of the chair of the education commission and quality,
I think I'd support what Alex said. I think if you could hide another committee off, then you'll lose it from where it's so important.
Okay. So we've all read the paper. We welcome the paper, and the board is asked to note progress made to implement and comply with the duty of quality.
And it's a big thank you to Maria, because she did try to support, but this is where she is working right across the organisation. Okay, so
thank you. Director of Finance report.
Thank you very much. So again, you'll have read the report and noticed that the year-to-date financial position, revenue position, this is at the end of December, was a reducing of spend to just over £300,000. One of the things that we constantly do and work with budget holders on is to review the work that they're doing and how that translates into financial risks or opportunities. So attached to the report, you'll see a high level summary of all the risks and opportunities that we've assessed financially. And this is really important in terms of getting that view about where we think we're going to end at the this of March 25. Based on that, there's quite a lot of detail in the report, but the high level summary I think to draw out of this is based on that assessment of where we think we'll be by the end of the year. And if we put policy around the bursary issue to one side, we would be forecasting a surplus of about £1.9 million. And this is because there's a number of factors, but we've seen under recruitment on some of our education training programs. We talked earlier about potentially the impact of the spring intake, and that is built into our assessment of some of those financial risks and opportunities. There are areas where we hold vacancies. Some of the pieces of work that we've described to date, there have been delays in taking some of those appointments. So there are a number of factors that feed into, if you like, improving financial position, and we've summarised those in the appendix. As well as those that we've got a fairly hard sort of evidence on that they will happen. There are a number of risks and opportunities that we look at based on soft intelligence. So we're aware of things that potentially may happen. We don't have the hard data to support that. We try and do a risk assessment around that. Based on that, we think that could improve the condition by about another £600,000. So if you take these things together, that would, before we talk about the bursary, that would potentially give us a surplus of about £2.5 million by the end of the year. Then if you factor in the issue that we'll be talking about this year, policy change on the bursary, although we've had no additional funding to support it this year, our estimate based on returns that we've had from universities and student award services, we think that the increased uptake of the bursary would cost us about an extra £2.4 million. So previously we'd estimated it at about £3 million. It's actually lower, and we can discuss that further. But we think that that's likely to cost about £2.4 million. Now, on the assumption that at the moment we've had no indication from Welsh Government that there would be additional funding, if you put those things together, we've got a line of sight to breaking even and being able to cover costs of bursary for this year. I would say this year only, because we know that going into next year, cost of the bursary policy will increase as we see more students coming into the system being eligible to take that up. Some of the early data that we've looked at around bursary uptake, we can see that there are a number of Welsh domicile students, so students who would be eligible for the bursary, who for some reason have not chosen to take it up. So that's something we need to probably look at in a lot more detail to understand why they've chosen not to take the bursary. But as a result of that, obviously our estimate that we made at the beginning of the year was based on all Welsh domiciled students taking up the bursary. There's around about 90 or so that appear to have chosen not to, which is why that wishing to improve. But essentially, we now, I think, have a line of sight to financial break even for this year. In terms of capital, again, we're forecasting that we'll fully use our capital allocation. Most of that is around implementing CODI, so the IT refresh program that we have funding for. And then I think the final thing just to say is that our public sector payment performance, so paying invoices on time, we're currently meeting and exceeding the 95% target. That's positive. I think that's probably all I wanted to cover. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions, comments?
Just a very quick question. Obviously, very pleased to see that the position we're in financially, obviously really being able to spend the money. The issue of the GP training is still quite a significant risk. And you referred to my second question really was on the bursary and the increased fees, and when have you got any idea when we're likely to know whether that's supposed to be funded?
So in terms of the GP training, obviously we took a decision with the board to increase the number of places, but over and above that, what we've seen this year is the number of GPs in training who have chosen to take an extension or to extend their training has increased. So I think when we had to look at last year, I think there was something like 53 GP trainees who had extensions to their training, and that's increased to about 78 this year. So it is an area that we're having a look at to understand why more GP trainees.
That's a third.
Yes, well, it's a third of those that are extending. I mean, there's a larger number that are in training, but it is significant, and that's why we're reporting an increased overspending in that area now. I think we probably need to understand some of the reasons behind why they're choosing to extend, but we are looking to try and model that through to understand the impact for next year and future years. Sorry, you asked a question around the tuition fees as well.
Do you when the decision?
So we understand that that will be clarified whether they issue a remit letter and the allocation that goes alongside the remit letter.
So no.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to come in on the GP?
Yes, yeah, just a comment. I suppose just to be clear, they don't choose to extend. I mean, it's people who haven't managed to get the exams or the training, and so it's a requirement to complete the requirements of training that requires an extension rather than individual related. And what you have to remember, there's the 3-year training program. So the increase in extension reflects the increase in trainees that we did 3 years ago. And it comes up. What we need to do is get better at modelling that. We've started that work, so I think we can predict it. We're trying to look at the reasons for it. Other than, is there anything else other than just the increase in numbers from 3 years ago, which is the main driver?
Thank you, Chair. Glenn, I wonder if you can help me understand some of the narrative and the Appendix 1. And when I cross-reference that with our risk register. So, for example, in the paper on page 5, it talks about in-year risks and opportunities, and it notes there the under spend for the last 6 months with regards to the spring cohorts. It notes that in the last month we forecast an overspend of 0.355, and you're saying that that remains unchanged. In the risk register, it notes that currently the spring cohorts are, as of the 12th of the 12th, are only at 290 of an expected 661. So, in my naivety, there's going to be a massive underspend there. And in your Appendix 1, there's no note of the opportunity that that may give us in terms of the potential underspend in those spring cohorts. Now, am I mixing up a various number of things there and getting confused?
Yeah, shall I just, so spring 24 happened. So that's
referring to past. Yeah. Okay.
So when we recruited in spring 24, so that would have been March 24.
Okay.
Our recruitment included a number of part-time and international students, which are generally they're more expensive to train than home students who are full-time, which resulted in us having an overspend that spring cohort. As we look forward to spring 25, which is actually March, we're expecting there to be an under recruitment, which will result in a financial gain, if you like. Try to be careful with risks and opportunities here, because they are financial risks and opportunities. By under recruiting, which is not a good thing, it improves our financial position. So sometimes the language gets mixed up as well. Yeah, but I think that's probably what you're referring to, John. Is the spring cohort that happened at the beginning of the 24-5 financial year, at the end of the 23-24 financial year.
That's helpful. But in terms of this year, I absolutely get the point that fundamentally we want to achieve 100% commission numbers. That is the absolute focus, because that is the pipeline of the workforce for the future. But based on the figures that we've got at the moment for this year, it is likely that we're not going to achieve that, and therefore there will be, again, accept the point of financial opportunities, not ideal, but there could well be income that will be impacting on our final accounts.
That's right.
Would it be helpful to put a note in as an addendum into the paper? Just to make it absolutely crystal clear.
For those of us that are naive,
no, it's not that at all. It is constantly moving between the different financial years and academic years, and the impact it has in any one financial year. So if you're right to ask.
And do we have a current picture as of the 30th of January with regards to our, because this figure was December, which is 295. Are we in a better position? Okay.
Any other questions?
Can I just ask a quick, as a clarification, you mentioned about these 90 students that have applied for the bursary. Are we mitigating? Is that likely to be, because you're seeking some clarification around that? If that changes, how does that impact the bursary figure? Would it?
So what if they chose not to take the bursary? It's highly unlikely that they would be able to then take the bursary afterwards. Right. There are some very exceptional circumstances. But moving forward, this is the first year that change in policy has come into effect. But obviously next year you'll have 2 years of students that will be eligible, which is why the cost of the bursary will go up and up. But we've reached a point in about 3 years' time where it potentially costs about an extra 15 million if all of those students chose to take the bursary.
Dawn's question is interesting. Does it mean that if I'm in my second, I haven't taken the bursary for year 1, does it mean in year 2 I can't decide I want to take the bursary?
No, if you've chosen not to, you wouldn't be eligible unless there are some exceptions.
Is there a rule that specifically says thou shalt not allowed?
It happened this year because there was a change, wasn't there? There was an opportunity given to second.
But
going forward, it will be indicated you can make your course.
Are you bound by that? That's the question I'm asking. So right at the very beginning, you've got to put the tail on the donkey. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So the board's asked to note for assurance the performance against key financial targets to the end of December 24. And the financial risks and opportunities which may impact on achieving key financial targets by the year end, including the risk regarding the change in bursary policy. And the board should also note that we still await our allocation and a decision on in-year funding of the bursary and education fee. No, just the bursary.
Yeah, tuition fee probably it doesn't apply.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Welsh language, iaith Gymraeg. Team update, Lisa.
Diolch yn fawr. Rwy'n cymryd bod pobl wedi darllen y papur, ond beth i fi moyn nodi yn bendant, gosodwyd deddfau drafft gefron y Senedd ar ddydd Mawrth hyn. A pwrpas hwnna oedd i ychwanegu awdurdodau iechyd arbennig, hynny yw ni, fel AaGIC, fel categori i reoliadau safonau Gymraeg. Yn nodi mwy na dim, a ti'n meddwl hwn yn y modol ar yr ymgynghoriad a bydd yn ydy cael ei cynnal o hyn ymlaen.
Well, any questions, comments? Good to see this paper. I'm asking the board to note the progress outlined within the report for assurance. Yeah? Diolch yn fawr. Speaking up safely. Update.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Felly papur sicr ydi hon. Mae'n adrodd ar y cynnydd am eithwyd o ran gweithredu'r fframwaith codi cwrlais Hebron. Speaking of safely, SUS. Bydd aelodau nodio'r papur i bod ni wedi bod yn canolbwyntio ar y gwaith a leidrwyd o ran newid y diwylliant geirodi SUS. A mae hynny'n adlewyrchu adborth a dderbynwyd gan y bwrdd yn ôl yn yr haf. Wrth yn nodi, ein bod ni wedi atodi yn cynllun ymgyrch i'r papur yn hynny cysu ar y neges SUS yn drwy'r myfyrwyr, fforddau a staff. Da ni hefyd wedi bod yn gynghori'n drylwyr gyda staff o ran sut i gyfathrebu gyda nhw a cefnogi'r neges SUS. Ac o ran y cynllun gweithredu SUS, ydych chi'n gweld yn bod ni wedi bod 30 o 32 gamau gweithredu wedi cael ei asesu'n wyrdd. Mae un o'r camau wedi cael ei asesu'n goch, ac mae hynny o ran derbyn gwybodaeth gan ysgolion a monitro pryderol gan gyfyrwyr. Ond byddwch chi hefyd yn nodi o'r papur yn bod ni yn cynnig sawl can ar gyfer sicrhau bod ni'n derbyn gwybodaeth yn y gwybodaeth. Ac mae hefyd un cam sydd wedi cael ei asesu'n Amber o ran sicrhau mynediad i tîm diogelu. Ac eto byddwch yn gweld yn bod ni mewn trafodaethau o ran sicrhau gwasanaeth yna. Felly, byddwn ni'n gofio i'n bod os gwelwch yn dda yn nodi'r papur er mwyn sicrhau.
Wow, Jane, as our speaking up safety champion, do you want to make any comments?
Just to say, Chair, that there's been some real progress over the last 6 months. I'm particularly impressed by the communication work that's actually starting to get messages out there in an accessible way. And I think that's a real improvement. But we're still at the start of the journey. And we need to be sure those messages are getting to where they need to, and that people feel able to use the processes and trust that they will be treated appropriately.
Any comments?
I think for me, I mean, obviously I welcome this paper and accept as well, on the sort of the beginning of sort of journey. I suppose it's that assurance that we're sort of tracking the improvements in staff and have the confidence to raise concerns and speak up. And I suppose that will come as we go along. We're capturing that data, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess we're expecting to see that demonstrated. The staff survey, the law administration as the information comes on an annual basis. But we were happy to visit staff survey. Also, there will be some data coming through due course.
What was our response rate?
It was 86.9.
86.9.
Just about 4 times as high as the average.
But there also needs to be a data flow from universities and
Yes,
those
yeah.
students.
So it's currently not in the graduate requirement because we end that. Also, we will be according to the board in terms of complaints and concerns. We do that to the board on an annual basis. We are starting to see more concerns from the areas that focus on speaking of safety, which is, yes, perhaps it's a good thing, but it reflects that the message is concentration.
And just on the back of that, following on from what Dawn said, the line that jumps out is demonstrating that concerns lead to action. And make sure that we close that, that is demonstrated because people feel raising them further, nothing changes and and that may not come out necessarily within staff survey, but it's key, isn't it? So it should be also be supported.
Okay, so been asked to consider and note the update in respect of implementation and speaking of safety plan HEIW for assurance. Can I ask? Thank you very much. In committee decisions, David?
Part per you not be my ability to tender that this week. He's also
Mark? I ask you to note that report.
Yes, yeah.
And we come to the consideration of the corporate risk register. We've had today's board meeting. Are there issues that need to be adjusted, Alex, in terms of corporate risk register as it's appeared earlier on today?
Obviously, in like every kind of injuries situation, we are going to consider that inclusion of the risk register. But see, this is published before. That needs to see
Obviously, in terms of the risks around the education trading and those that have changed and approval, however, I think there are some separate risks.
So we've had indication that the plan is approvable.
Yeah, but I think there will be potentially other risks around tuition fee increase. What that means for commissioning education growth.
So can you craft the form of words that reflects that?
Yeah, we need to all of these risks. Generally, have a look at the sort of information and then assessment of whether that needs to be on corporate risk register and what the probability of those things are. So we will do that.
I wonder whether there's a broader higher education risk. Yes, we have an issue which has crystallised in terms of one of our drivers. But I think there may be a need, and John and I suggested this previously, to have a risk which recognises the challenges facing higher education providers.
It is on our risk. Yes. It is there, but where is it pitched or worded at the
I think that's where
at the right option?
Yeah, it's number 14. But we've also we have got an item due to come back to the February board on this issue.
Yeah,
Discussing with the board in more detail so we can review the word as part of that.
I think in relation to that, Chair, what might be study in order to inform that risk is first government strategy from HEIWs of their position with regards to their financial stability, etc., what plans they've got in place. So we know exactly where we are with regards to one, that's become clear. We've got an understanding of another, but a definitive position I think would be helpful to inform what we may need to be doing in terms of our commissioning process. Can I ask a second question with regards to risk one and the security implementation plan that was talked about with regards to mitigation? Are there any matters since the last report that the board should be made aware of?
No, not from a security perspective.
So, I think for me, this corporate risk register conversation is probably one of the most important opportunities that the board meeting gives us. And I think for us to have an informed debate in February just maintains the usefulness and the timeliness of our measured risk. So thank you for that. So I've asked you to note the report for reassurance, and we welcome the opportunity to keep it fresh, alive and kicking. For information, the NHS Wales Shared Services Partnership Committee report some good papers. So I'm asking you to note that report. I've done.
Just briefly, Chair, we note the comments on the lawyer, but it refers to a deep dive on that particular aspect, and that's really important to HEIW. And I didn't get a sense from the paper of what was achieved on the deep dive and what the implications were. So I think it's really important that we revisit particular aspect.
How will we do that?
Yeah. We're currently having a relative audit with regards to our relationship with shared services. So I understand that deep time moving forward, but we can see that we're looking at it. So
So can I ask that the audit committee in particular keeps a weathered eye on this? And I know that the executive team will pick these issues up, but I think it's important for us as a board to appreciate what the relationship and the governance line is and where the buck stops. Is the whole panoply of the relationship.
Indeed, Chair. I seem to remember, David, that at the last audit committee we asked internal audit to append the deep dive to their audit on our aspects.
Yes,
of SLE.
and they gave assurance that they would take the deep dive,
yes,
to take their scans into the report for us.
So
we should.
Chair, we're excited on it and looking forward to receiving the papers.
I'm sure you will give it your due diligence.
Chair, can I just ask who our representative on this particular partnership?
It's me.
Okay. Just so we know who's coming to see.
So it's you. Okay, thank you for that. I've got no other urgent matters apart from I want to say two things at the end of the meeting. Joe? That's one. Two, I want to say thank you to the way that the executive team is managing a period of uncertainty. And I think today's agenda represents the one thing I think that is really important to this organisation, that is progressive, meaningful, and speaks to the moment and the tomorrow. So I think I'd like to say thank you to the executive team. Hard work, but absolutely showing dividends. I need more data. So, right, thank you very much, everybody. Oh, John.
Yeah, can I just say, I'm sure on behalf of our MIS, I thank you also to Jill, particularly for us when we came new to the board, in terms of the support and mentorship that we have. Many of us have come from health boards. It was difficult transition, and certainly I welcomed the support that I had from Jill during that time, and particularly now during the handover. Like that to be looked.
So, see, you've done all right, John. You've done all right. Okay, with that, I close the meeting and note that we had an in-committee session ahead of this board. And when do we meet again? Board development on the 27th of February and a open board meeting on the 27th of March. Diolch yn galon.